Welcome back to the We the Patriots podcast. I'm your host, Sal Assante, and today we are going to be discussing where I have been, what's been going on around the United States and the world, and possible financial collapse incoming. All that and possibly more coming up on the We the Patriots podcast. Let's go. So, it has been a bit since I've been in. I just want to lay out everything to you guys because, well, it's been a lot. So basically every weekend has been a snowstorm here in New Jersey, and it has been brutal. 2 weeks ago was hoping to record a show on time. Didn't happen. Last week we got one of the biggest storms we've had in the past 10 years at something around 15, 18 inches of snow. And as most of you know, I work in the snow. I plow, and I had about a 37 hour shift. I wasn't recording a podcast, and I apologize to you guys, but we are back. We're going to be back on regular schedule. I'm going to be releasing this show today, obviously Friday, which is the 30th, and you will also have a show coming out on our normally scheduled time of Monday, which should be the 2nd, I believe. And we'll be back on regular schedule from there. I apologize, but things kind of kicked me in the schnoz. And on top of everything, my girlfriend and I got a puppy, and fortunately to her, had to leave the puppy with her while I was out plowing snow for 36 hours. So been spending a lot of time with the dog, taking care of the snow, doing all the cleanup, and just did not find time to do this. I apologize to you guys, but we're back. So while I was gone, Trump decided to make another mess of things, and it's been hard to follow, to tell you the truth. I just want to give you some general thoughts. I don't have a lot of just hard fact going at you, but I think the best thing to start with is the shootings in Minnesota. So first and foremost, with Renee Good, I have my opinions about the matter. I think that there was a lot of wrong that was done on both sides, and I think that that's can be looked at as a cowardly position. But here's the thing: when I saw the video, number one, the officer, I believe it was an ICE agent, put himself in front of her vehicle while she was clearly moving, clearly getting out of the way. Well, that just seems like an escalatory tactic. For her, on her part, she was told to stop and get out of the vehicle. I also saw other angles of the video which confused things. She was being told multiple things, both to get the fuck out of there and also to stop and get out of the vehicle. When you're telling a person in a frantic situation like that multiple things and they get confused, they get scared, there's guns that are around, it's not surprising to see that things ended the way that they did. And that is with a shooting of the protester, not actually someone that ICE was going after, the shooting of a protester while the vehicle was moving. And I found that actually to be the most absurd part of the madness, was that the ICE agent decided to fire on a moving vehicle. Now, with that said, there's a couple of different things to talk about with this. Number one is that mass deportations are just not happening. When you look at the numbers, the rate of deportation, even including self-deportation, is at lower rates than Trump in his first term, at lower rates than Obama. Now, you can make the caveat that a lot of the deportations that were happening under Obama, under Biden, were happening as apprehensions at the border, and many more people were let in. Okay, you can make that argument. That said, if the numbers are to be correct, and if you are to believe the numbers, which the numbers can't possibly be true, we're looking at anywhere between something like 8 and 12 million people, possibly more, let in just under Biden in his 4 years. If that's the case, you need deportation numbers that are so far above record highs in order to get ourselves back to some sort of equilibrium in terms of how many illegal immigrants we have in this nation as compared to citizenry. Whether you're talking about the effects on home prices, the value of food, of gas, all these items are going to get taken up because we have more people that are not expected to be here. And construction of new housing, production of food and goods in general just can't match up with an influx of 11 million people. Now, when we're talking about that, mass deportations just not happening. What ICE has been doing, what the Trump administration has been doing in terms of deportations, of handling the border, stopping the border, they seem to be doing well. But in terms of trying to rectify the situation from Obama, Biden, Trump won, the numbers just aren't matching up. And if that's the case, what they seem to be doing with all this ICE presence in cities, these raids, is for show. It's in order to try to get the MAGA base to a point of accepting that things are being done that were promised on the campaign. And at the end of the day, again, I'm going to reiterate that things are just not really happening at a pace that's going to make any noticeable change. And with that being said, I think that the protesters have a pretty good case in terms of, why is ICE doing what they're doing? Now, impeding law enforcement is not a good way of going about your cause, and you are going to put yourself in major, major danger. That sounds really weird. You're putting yourself in the line of fire, quite literally, for reasons unknown. And I think that that is just unintelligent. When you're talking about someone like Renee Good on her part, putting herself in that position. The information coming back on her seems that she lost custody of 2 of her 3 children, moved to Canada, had another child, turned into a lesbian, came back just to protest ICE and got her child into some sort of like camp or schooling or something like that, just so that she could be here and have a reason to be here. It's all absurd. And if that's all to be true, which I'm not 100% on, so don't take me at my word, just what I heard, it's absurd. It's a totally absurd situation. The fact that people are even doing something like that is ridiculous. And again, if you're impeding law enforcement, you cannot be surprised when the consequences to your actions come and smack you right in the face. And as what really happened with Renee Good. Now, do I think what happened was a good thing? Absolutely not. As I was talking with John, this is probably about a year ago, right as Donald Trump was getting into office, and we discussed what would have to happen when it comes to illegal immigrants. Go take a look at that show and just kind of mark our conversation on the illegal immigration standpoint. Things like this were bound to happen. It's an ugly process. You are removing people from their families. You are removing families from the country. Unless that person is a violent criminal, unless that person is a rapist, a pedophile, a murderer, if they are just a normal person, they're getting deported. It's an ugly scene. They are a person in their community. In a lot of cases, even though they are illegal immigrants, they're paying taxes on their wages, right? So when you have things like this that are occurring and kind of run out of, the violent criminals to deport, you're going to start getting down to people that are really contributing to society. And I think that's where we're at now with the deportations in general. And it's tough. So again, I don't think what happened to Renee Good was a good thing at all. And that being said, she shouldn't have been where she was, and she should not have put herself in a position to be shot. I do not think that the ICE officer did the right thing. I do not think that firing on a moving vehicle is smart at all, especially when you're talking about in a residential area. That bullet could have gone and hurt anyone. Just look at the Trump assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. Things go haywire and people get hurt when things aren't targeted, when things aren't thought out. And that's a scary thought. Now, moving on to the next shooting. It was actually, from what I've seen, was not ICE. It was actually Customs and Border Patrol. Now, with Customs and Border Patrol being in Minnesota, the first thing that, people are all upset that, Border Patrol can even be in Minnesota. I think it's important to keep in mind that Minnesota also shares a border with another country, just not Mexico, just not where everybody thinks that the illegals are coming from, because there is plenty of illegal immigration, not on the scale, of course, of the Mexico-US border, but there's plenty of illegal immigration and illegal operations occurring just over the border in Canada, whether you're talking about drug operations, whether you're talking about people moving in illegally, whatever, what have you, there is a border there. So it's not insane to think that Border Patrol is there. That being said, what happened with the most recent guy, I do not actually have his name, Alex Preddy. That's right. Alex Preddy, the most recent one. Allegedly, what he is an ICU nurse. I haven't seen any information whether he was still retaining that job, whether he quit his job, but I do know that he was a part of protest. It seemed like, from reports that I saw, he was trying to help a fellow protester. He was armed. He had a weapon. And if you go to a protest with a weapon, odds are things can go south pretty quickly. Whether a officer is going to assume that you are brandishing your weapon, even if you're not, things can just go sideways. And it just never really sounds like a great idea to have a weapon, even if you are a concealed carry permit holder or what have. Doesn't sound like a great idea to go to a protest with a weapon, especially not a firearm. So The video that I saw looked like he was not brandishing his weapon, looked like he was in the right, doing the right thing, and ended up getting shot for it. Now, with all that being said, again, impeding law enforcement, I can't imagine. Now, this does happen. Of course, cops go rogue, officers go rogue. This wasn't cops, Border Patrol agent, but people go rogue, especially when they have a place of power. And it's very possible that that is what happened in this situation here. Somebody saw something seemed as it wasn't, and an officer took the chance and fired upon Alex Preddy. So with all that being said, kind of just to wrap up the Minnesota situation, we wouldn't really be in this position, I think, without the hysteria around the Somali situation, as we talked about a few weeks ago, the fraud and abuse that has been happening. And something to consider, I was actually having a conversation with someone the other day, and we were talking about, you know, when you are an immigrant to this country, there should not be any way in which you are on the government team, whether you're talking about your community, whether you're talking about you individually. If you're coming to this country, you should have an income, you should have a salary, you should have whatever it is that's going to hold you up. You should not be on government assistance. That should be relegated to citizens only. And I'm sorry if that offends you, but that's just the harsh reality. We have enough citizens that are struggling in our country as it is. To try to help out people who aren't even citizens is ridiculous. So that whole situation, if that wasn't allowed, if the fraud and abuse was not permitted in any way, shape, or form, that community did not receive money whatsoever, we wouldn't really be in this position, but we are. Another point of fact, I believe, so maybe I shouldn't say point of fact. Another thing to consider is that I believe that Minnesota and Minneapolis in particular has considered itself a sanctuary city and state. That should not exist. When you have a place that is basically a state within a country that is stating that they are going to go against federal law, they're not going to allow federal officers in their state or to do their jobs. They're going to harass them. They're going to allow their citizenry to, go to their hotel rooms and harass them overnight while they're trying to sleep. That should not be allowed. I don't understand how, when we were going through, it was about 2018 to 2020 when the sanctuary state thing really started popping up and cities were not allowing the prosecution of illegal immigrants and other crimes even. And I just can't fathom how that's even possibly allowed. This may come off as a more of like a dictator statement, but if I was in the lead and one state governor decided that they are a sanctuary state, I would just arrest that governor. They're clearly impeding on federal law. I don't see how it's not possible to get that cleaned up quickly. So I feel like if I'm being honest about it, both sides are utilizing the opportunity to try to get press for their core base and make them feel like their side, whichever side it may be, is doing what they need to do to combat the other. Whether you're talking about a Democratic policymaker and they are purposefully becoming a sanctuary state to go against Trump and to get Trump to make a mistake like putting people in Minnesota and having them shot, or whether it's the other way around, Trump not wanting to prosecute the top of the top, whether you're talking about the governors, the mayors of big cities, because having this is the issue of illegal immigration and sanctuary cities, states, what have you, having that around gives a good cause for you and your base to get ginned up and keep the focus off of things like, I don't know, the Epstein files, right? Or all the wars that are going on. It gives a great opportunity for you to shine the camera, shine the light on something that your base will get pissed off about. Now, with that being said, just to kind of segue here, and I think that's enough talk on Minnesota. The whole situation is kind of gruesome, and I would hope that Trump has a better battle plan going forward. But in speaking with the Epstein files, and not to harp on an issue that we've beaten to death on this show, but there was a deadline that has now passed by, I believe, well over a month, that all documents were supposed to be released, and they have not been. They will not be, just to let you know. Even if something is dropped, it's going to be redacted to high hell. You're not going to be able to understand anything. And the reason is, in my opinion, there's a lot of protection going on. Even if it's not Trump himself, people that got him elected, people that are in his cabinet right now are implicated in that situation when it comes to the Epstein files. So you will not see anything dropped on that. The most transparent presidential cabinet, presidential office in the history of the country is anything but the most transparent. They are going to continue their way inevitably. It sucks, but the faster I think that we come to grips with the fact that our leaders are terrible human beings. It doesn't matter who you're talking about, whether you're talking about a career politician, or you're talking about someone like Donald Trump. It does not matter. They're all in the same circles. It is all about power, and they have abused that power. And frankly, I think even if we are going to come out as a country, vote them out, get them all out of here, it doesn't much matter because the next round is just going to get implicated, blackmailed, and we're going to be back on the same train. So with that being said, I think that the last thing that I want to talk about today and kind of clue you guys in on is, well, twofold. Number one, I haven't heard too much of an update on Venezuela, which is interesting. I think Trump got his way, and that's going to be a non-issue going forward. He got the person that he wanted in and Maduro out, so good for him. Something I heard a little bit of an update on is that apparently peace talks between Ukraine and Russia are in a much developed stage, especially since the last time the news went around. So that would be very, very good to hear if that situation gets cleared up and the wars that we were very worried about as Trump took office, both with Palestine and Israel and Ukraine and Russia, if they are cleared up and we are not looking at world tension, that's phenomenal, actually. Now, what we did hear a lot of news on and a lot of hubbub over the past few weeks was Greenland. As you may remember, there was, I wouldn't say a concerted effort during Trump's campaign, but definitely some mentioning that he really wanted to go after Greenland. Not militarily, wanted to purchase it, but that he wanted Greenland. And this came up, I want to say about 2 weeks ago or a week ago. This came up, it was right around when Maduro was captured. And it basically sent the entire internet into a frenzy. Why did it turn into a frenzy? Well, there was a huge part about it that basically said that this would violate NATO. They'd have to call in NATO at this, that. And then everybody realized that, well, NATO basically is completely contributed by the US. So if that's the case, there's really no point in using NATO to go after the United States because that would be like the US hurting itself. Now, what do I think is going to happen with Greenland? It's a very kind of nonsensical situation. I don't think there's going to be any movement. I think at the end of the day, I don't think that it's up for purchase by Denmark, and I don't think that the people of Greenland want it. That being said, if the price makes sense, I guess you acquire the land and see what you could do. I'm not too up to speed on why exactly it is a great piece of land for the United States. It's not going to be extremely productive, doesn't have a ton of natural resources from my understanding. What it does do is put yourself in a position to monitor, especially Russian submarines and movements by sea. So that I can understand. Is it worth whatever price tag? Probably not. That being said, the funniest kind of interpretation of Trump going after Greenland is the risk analogy, where you're talking about getting that North American sphere and getting the last piece because he just went after Venezuela. So that to me is probably the funniest and I guess just dumbest way of thinking about it. But it does make me laugh as someone who's played Risk. So if you have, maybe you'll enjoy that as well. Other than that, I think that it's just Trump boistering, kind of standing up on his platform and trying to say what the base might want to hear. I don't think any of the base really gives a shit about this. I think most of his base is caring about the fact that we have not seen the changes that we're hoping for. We've not seen a decrease in prices. We actually see an increase around the board. We have not seen an increase in wages. We've seen stagnation, and we've not seen massive tax cuts. We've really seen taxes stay laissez-faire, and that sucks. One thing that I did see on the tax front as we get into the last kind of story here and talk about economics for a second, I saw that they have a child tax credit, something like $2,000 to $3,000 child. But then the elderly tax credit just got bumped to like $6,000 or $7,000 tax credit. The most asinine thing that I could think of is giving a massive tax credit to the wealthiest generation in America, and rightfully so, they've been alive the longest, giving a massive tax break to them, meanwhile not giving nearly the same tax break to people trying to start a family is asinine. Does not make any fucking sense. You're punishing people for trying to start a family in a very tumultuous time and a time when it's very hard to save up any money. Now, as we get into the economy, and the last thing is that I think anybody who has been paying attention online has realized that asset prices over the past few days, this is very recent now, have been declining pretty rapidly. First and foremost on a lot of people's mind is gold, because gold was on such a rush and now it's been cut, I want to say by like 10 or 15% the past 3 days. It's craziness. And to be honest with you, I'm not too upset about it. As we talked about many times on the show before, stock market and asset prices is not indicative of economic health, so you should not pay attention to that. Asset prices have been so high, whether you're talking about taxes, whether you're talking about gold and silver, whether you're talking about home prices. Any asset has been so astronomically expensive that it is unachievable, generally speaking, for the average American to own a home, to purchase stock regularly, to have a well-funded retirement account. All of this stuff is getting put by the wayside just to stay alive, just to have a place to live, just to rent, just to have a vehicle. All of this stuff is so expensive that it doesn't make any sense. So my thought, and this could be me only, and you can get mad at me, but my thought is a correction is well overdue. And a correction, I mean a big one. I mean, stock prices are probably going to come down. I would think they have to come down 20 to 30% just to correct and get back to a reasonable level. I don't have all the terminology on my head right now, but when you're looking at like stocks and why they're so overperforming, it's because something like a PE ratio, price to earnings ratio, is so far out of whack, where it used to be that a very good company is something like 10 times your earnings is going to be the price of your stock. And now it's something like 50, 60, 100, which basically means that companies are being bet on so far out in the future that you can't even make sense of it, because if something goes wrong today, it doesn't affect what people are pricing into the market. All what I'm trying to say is that the asset prices don't make sense. Buying a starter home for $500,000 does not make any sense. Having gold at $5,000 an ounce doesn't make any sense. And it is a scary outlook, but at the end of the day, especially for our young generation, we need to be able to buy in at some point, and this could be the opportunity. So I wouldn't look at it, if you are one of those people who is priced out of the market right now, I wouldn't look at it as a bad thing that things are a little shaky, because again, a correction is well overdue. When that happens, I'm not sure. I don't think that what we just witnessed the last few days is the correction. It's gonna be a rough one, and people are going to be panicking. But if you are smart enough, you have a little bit of cash saved, you could really make a good turnaround on what you have. So try to take advantage of that. And really, I hope that you all take a look at the events that are going around. There was one other thing, I guess, kind of connected to the economy, kind of war, is that Trump pushed and I believe has gotten and secured a $1.5 trillion military budget. If that ends up panning out and he does get that budget, be on the lookout for a lot of crap. You're going to get a lot of misinformation directed pretty much from the administration themselves, trying to make sure that you're not following what they're doing, because a $1.5 trillion military budget without conducting wars or going through proxy wars and spending money that way doesn't make any sense. So be on the lookout for that. There's going to be a lot of fishy crap coming around, I would say, in the next probably year or two, if the military budget's going to stay that high. Be on the lookout, stay informed, do what you can, and if asset prices start going down, take advantage with whatever cash you have. Try to invest in some good long-term investments and try to get what you can and what you deserve as a hardworking American. It's about all I got for you today. I love you all. Thanks for sticking by me, and I will be back to you on Monday in a few days with a short little episode about gambling.
I wish I were the fucking state. I wanna be something, not nothing. Trapped inside my dream and I'm running away from these demons. But the feeling's so good, I'ma keep dreaming.